Indie Fish TV welcomes Toronto blues, folk, R&B singer-songwriter and guitarist extraordinaire, Mike Celia. Mike's smoky voice and emotive lyrics will both charm and haunt you with anecdotal narratives of life, lessons learned, and the lines we must walk in the name of love. Ooh, baby. In 2007, Mike released his debut EP, Things I've Sold, earning him 5 nominations at the Mississauga Arts Awards and winning a Toronto Independent Music Award for Best Blues. After releasing the debut full-length album, Falling Backwards, in 2014, Mike joined forces with the award-winning a cappella band, A440. The group's success facilitated years of steady touring through the U.S. and Canada. A hotly sought-after guitarist, Mike has performed and toured extensively all over North America, Europe, Mexico, and Australia, with both Juno Award-winning soul artist Tanika Charles and Juno Award-winning band Digging Roots. In 2021, Mike is shifting his focus back to his solo career, and he's expected to release his second full-length album by the year's end. To keep up with Mike's progress, and for all the latest Mike Celia news, follow him on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, and be sure to catch him right here on Indie Fish TV.
Many times till you had enough. She walks in the room like a breeze, flows through the cold traffic with heat, and I can't help from staring, so lost and uncaring, as she comes walking to me. Her eyes are the shade of copper and wheat. Oh, they smile at me so familiar and sweet. The room becomes lighter as she comes in brighter, shining a light over me. And it's always warm beside the fire, resting our bones in the warm glow of desire. And it's alright if it keeps us up all night, 'cause it's always warm beside the fire. In the park by her house, she goes dancing alone. Oh, bohemian gypsy in search of her home. And the spirits that guide her are right there beside her, carving her dreams out of stone. And she shares them with me as we walk along streets that carry us aimlessly through the debris. Oh, each day of the whole night, romancing our insides till morning awakes from her sleep. And it's always warm beside the fire, resting our bones in the warm glow of desire. And it's alright if it keeps us up all night, 'cause it's always warm beside the fire. With the warmest embrace and a smile on her face, oh, she anxiously caters to all that I chase, sowing the seeds of the dreams that I feed her and putting the pieces in place. And I know that she'll go when the wind tells us so. I can't can't keep her here, but she'll always be close, and I'll always remember the nights we surrendered, swaying to the music so slow, and it's always warm beside the fire. Resting our bones in the warm glow of desire. And it's alright if it keeps us up all night, 'cause it's always warm beside the fire. How many times till you had enough? How many times can you remember?
Welcome back to Indie Fish TV. Thank you for tuning in. We are sitting down with one of my favorite people in the whole world, Canadian songwriter Mike Celia, who you just watched perform his song Fire, which was fire. Thank you for joining us, Mike.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be a part of this project. It was exciting.
Yeah, man. It's great to have you here. So you and I have talked a lot about the process of collaboration. We have collaborated, right? You know, bringing other people into the creative mix, you know, and the challenges as well as the benefits of that experience, right?
Yep.
So I'm just wondering, like, you know, your thoughts on what role criticism maybe plays in creating art.
I enjoy criticism, but I think it depends on who and where said criticism is coming from. I don't know how to make a rule about that. I think you gotta sometimes trust your gut, pay attention, listen. I guess the best thing to say about criticism is there's an opportunity to learn and grow. And I think that that's what we're always trying to do, trying to grow and evolve. And criticism, I think, goes a long way to help make that happen. I have a quick little anecdotal story about criticism, actually. Long time ago, years ago, when I was first starting out, I was playing this gig and this guy came up to me after the show, and I was pretty new to this whole thing, but I was feeling good and getting lots of positive feedback. And this one guy came up to me and says, "Hey, great show, love your voice, love your songs, great lyrics. You have zero stage presence." And that kind of like was like this, what does that even mean? I didn't even really understand that, to be honest with you, which was actually probably more to the fact of I needed to hear that. But I did have a friend there who overheard that, and she was like, "How dare you say that? And you don't know anything about Mike and blah, blah." And I was sort of like, hold on a second, let's hear what he has to say. Long story short, he was right. I started to work on being more present on stage after that conversation. He wasn't even trying to be a jerk. He had that look on his face like, oh no, did I say the wrong thing? And I sort of saw that look in his eyes. I trusted it. And we had a nice conversation. And I remember probably about a year or two later, after taking that conversation seriously, a lot of people coming up to me and saying they noticed a huge difference in my stage presence, which was great. So criticism is good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I well, definitely, you know, with regards to it, obviously it depends on how tactful someone is when they approach it, because if you're an artist or, you know, like myself, I'm very sensitive to criticism, and it can be very crippling depending on where it's coming from, like you said. But in terms of like the role of like when you're in a collaborative space, like when you're songwriting, like you and I have also been in a collaborative space, and creatively, you know, Kevin and I, who we songwriting for like 13 years together, and it's interesting the dynamic of people, you know, that have been writing, creating for a long period of time together, who have kind of gotten into a rhythm, and you know, the space is more open. You're more open to the criticism versus like if you're in a space with like a new collaboration, you know, and someone is maybe not keen on a particular idea, you know, you know, it's one of those things, it's such a vulnerable space because you're putting out there like, oh, I have this, but you don't, and you kind of have to balance, right? Because you don't want to be, you know, it's kind of a yin and yang, because you don't want to criticize the other person to the point that they're now like sort of suffocating their own ideas and vice versa. You know, so criticism, you know, in terms of like in a collaborative setting can be, you know, kind of a balancing act for both, you know, people. Anyway, yeah, that's a great little anecdote, and of course, I've had lots of moments of those. Like, I've had lots of criticism from many different people throughout my career. So definitely. You know, something that is that can be utilized for the better, but can also be, you know, depending, as you said, like can also be very like, you know, crippling depending. I have this great quote that I love, that it's a critic stands atop the hill and watches the battle below, and when the battle is over, the critic walks down and stabs the wounded. But I digress. It's like one of my favorite quotes like ever. Anyway, moving on. And we're kind of shifting topics here, but you and I, you know, we've had many introspective conversations, and I wanted to talk to you about like music as a tool for social change, and you know, reflecting. I've been thinking about this a lot, you know, reflecting in the past, you know, during the 60s, when you have the rise of the civil rights movement and the ascendancy of like counterculture, like the hippie movement, you know, music at that time was such a powerful instrument in galvanizing communities, you know, to rise up in the interest of change. You have the revolutionaries like the Bob Dylans and the Nina Simones and the Bob Marleys, but it feels today, and this could just be me, you know, in sort of the COVID world, we're all very isolated, but it, you know, though communities are still fighting for change, it seems that music is playing kind of a less persuasive or mobilizing, might be the better way of putting it, role than it did. And so kind of thinking about that, like, you know, where you in 2021, where you've got like the attention economy at its pinnacle and there's so many distractions, do you think that music is still as powerful of a tool as it used to be in terms of, you know, being a mobilizing force in social change?
Well, the first part of your question is, do I think music still has the same power? I think music has the same power that it always had. I think music has so much power. That said, I think that the way in which music is being used nowadays doesn't feel the same compared to when I look back at, you know, this era, like, you know, in the 60s and all these great artists. I do feel a little bit like music is a bit of it could be a little more consumer based, a lot of product placement, not just in the songs. I'm not talking about like specific product placement in the songs, but you know, with social media and all the tools that we as artists have to use, we have no choice. And I'm not complaining. It's just, it's kind of the norm right now. We kind of have to appeal to an audience, and we're trying to get that audience. We're trying to reach that audience. So when I say all these things, I want to be careful not to sound too judgmental or too critical, to keep from the first question.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that has a lot of hope that that's going to change. And the reason why I see that changing right now is because I see a big sort of wave of social change coming right now. Call it what you want, call it the woke movement, you know, but we're coming to terms with our past. We're coming to terms with our humanity, and a lot of wonderful things are happening. A lot of wonderful, difficult conversations are happening. I think that while the music that's out there has always been fighting for social change, we may not have seen as much of it in recent years, but I have a feeling that we'll be seeing more of it. And I'm pretty excited about that, if I'm being completely honest with you. So maybe it cycles. I don't know. I mean, we only live 100 years. How long has this place been around?
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, yeah, it's just sort of one of those, because I've been watching a lot of, obviously being in like the quarantined world, you know, I've been watching a lot of like documentaries, and I just watched like the Nina Simone and like the Bob Dylan Don't Look Back. I was just watched that yesterday, and you know, it was just obviously I didn't live during that period of time, so I have no idea, you know, I can't obviously reflect on, or I don't have a perspective of the world then versus the world now. But it just seems like back then, like music just had such a persuasive power, you know. And I know, you know, it's not that I'm like disenfranchised about, like, obviously I'm moved by music all the time. But it just doesn't, you know, back then it was just seemed to have like such a potency, you know, in terms of galvanizing, you know, communities and
I'm sorry, I had to.
Oh, kitty cat.
I'm sorry, she was eating the wire, and I had to, but I don't want to interrupt. Okay, baby. That's it. She made her cameo, and now she's embarrassed, so she won't come back. So I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
please continue.
Oh, that's perfect. That will just segue us into the next question, because otherwise I would just meander on forever. So you're up.
It's true. But the one thing I wanted to add to that conversation is that, you know, I wonder how much hindsight plays in all of that, right? Like, we can clearly see the history of that era and how music affected change. I agree with Mike. I agree with, I think, both of you, in that it doesn't feel necessarily like music is like as much of a driving force for change or activism. But we're also in the middle of it all. And not to mention, there's just like, we're always just bombarded with information, and you know, it's so hard to
totally, yeah,
really, it's so hard to have to step back from the painting and see that whole picture, you know. So
yeah, totally.
I think time will tell us a little more, but I do think artists have a responsibility to speak on the state of the world and events of today, and also try to ask hard questions and get people thinking more. So
absolutely,
yeah, hopefully it's happening, you know. And so speaking of that, I know songwriting for you, you know, is an active way to process your own emotional experiences. I mean, like all of us songwriters, really. But you know, do you ever look back at earlier songs and kind of revisit those thoughts or emotions or experiences, kind of with your current perspective, you know, or wisdom you've gained? You know what I mean? Like, do songs change for you over time, or
Yeah, absolutely. Songs, I mean, I change. And so the meaning of the songs changes. I mean, a really simple example of this, I mentioned to my partner actually not long ago. I said, you know, it's funny, I've written many songs about partners and about relationships and intimacy, and those songs were very personal. They were written about somebody that I was very close to in my life, but the themes of love seem to have a lot of common denominators. And it's like I can rediscover a love song again through the sort of new lens of my newfound love. So that's one really kind of new way to see things, and also see kind of some of the things I might have been struggling with at the time that I'm not struggling with anymore, which is probably one of my cringiest feelings when I'm reading back some old lyrics. But to take away, like, to not be negative. I think it's important for me to look back on that, to see my evolution. I think that our music, our recordings, our creations are sort of like, it's like we're mapping our growth. It's like we're mapping our course in life. So to be hard on yourself for you know, feeling a certain way in a song you wrote maybe 5 years ago is somewhat, it doesn't seem to be working with that theme. It's like, but isn't that great that you've grown? You know?
Yeah, it's funny that do you ever watch like Sarah Silverman? She does this amazing podcast. She was talking about this exact same thing. Of course, she was reflecting, she got into a little bit of heat because of she had done some jokes about Paris Hilton, like back in like 2000, early 2000s, that were a little off-colored and you know, kind of derogatory. and Paris, which now which is great, like with the conversations that are happening with like the Britney Spears documentary, and like Paris Hilton now coming out and speaking about, you know, how she felt so sort of belittled and disgraced in the media, and as a woman and an entertainer, you know, it's quite prevalent, you know, of an experience. And Sarah talked about that, and she was very apologetic, and she really owned, you know, like her mistakes, and reflected on it, and realized, you know, but she talks about this idea of growth, and that, you know, even, you know, when you talk about cancer culture and all these things, you know, it's you know, if you reflected on the person that you were, the songs that you were, you know, wrote, you know, when you were in your early 20s, and that was what defined you, and somebody took a snapshot of that, and that was all they knew, and that's what defined you for the rest of your life. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense, you know. You know, it's as though like you did something when you were 7 that was like, you know, whatever, egregiously bad, and then that was like for the rest of your life, like that's how you're defined in society, you know. So I think that also is like really, that's a great point in terms of, it's a great way of looking at songs, you know, as sort of like a map, or like a narrative, you know, like an act, like each record, or each EP, or each song is kind of like an act in your life, you know, in the play of your life. And yeah, I mean, if I were to reflect on, or back on some of like our earlier stuff, you know, with Running Red Light, you know, and then, you know, a lot of that never even hit the airways, thank God, you know. But you know, you look at it, you're like, oh my God, you know. But music is interesting that way, you know, when you're sort of in the creative process, and you know, whether you release it or not, you know, but when you look back on it, and you have those like, ooh, those cringe-worthy like moments, or not, or like, wow, I was really like, fuck, I was profound. You know? I was really like,
I was ahead of my time.
You used the analogy.
ingenuity in this is like, what's that?
I was just going to say, you use the analogy of a snapshot, and I think that that's a really, really great parallel, because looking back at old photos from your 20s, and how you dressed, and how you did your hair, and yeah, it's like, you know, you look back on those photos and you're like, this is silly sometimes, you know, like some of the things that I was doing, but you're not hard on yourself. You're like, that was fun though. Like I was just figuring it out, and I had a blast.
Yeah, totally. Just trying some things out while, you know, yeah.
It's what I needed then, and I wouldn't be me now. And if I'm at all proud of myself, then I should be proud of that.
Mm-hmm. All roads lead to here, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right here on Indie Fish TV. This is where your life has taken you.
This is a great place, guys. I'm so happy to be here.
All right. Well, I think we're going to swing into your indie pick. We're going to talk about Chloe. So
it's Chloe Charles, right?
Chloe Charles. Yeah. Let's talk about Chloe Charles. Tell us a little bit about her.
Chloe Charles is a brilliant, talented, amazing, wonderful songwriter, performer, vocalist, visual artist. She's a mother. She's my friend. I love her to death. We've been great friends for some time now. And geez, I mean, I feel like there's a lot that you could say that is great and positive about Chloe, but those are kind of the main things for me.
So tell us about the song that you selected for Indie Fish TV.
So I chose a song called Head High. I love Head High because it's a really well-written song, and I'm really kind of a stickler for good songs. If I'm going to pick one, I got to really like it, not just because it sounds good and it feels good. In fact, this one doesn't feel great, to be honest, but it's for me, it's reminiscent of a lot of things I go through on the regular, with regards to depression and anxiety. And I thought the song really spoke deeply to me, and choosing this song, choosing Chloe Charles as the artist, and choosing this song is all really connected kind of a lot to our friendship. Chloe and I have been great support for each other over the years. And we've spent a lot of time talking about things like depression and anxiety, whether it be our own or trying to support each other or other friends. I think it's really important right now to be talking about these things. Our mental health is critical. We're going through a pandemic. Shit's crazy. Can I say shit? I said it. You can bleep it out. Shit's crazy. I almost said the F word. I won't. So I think that this song held a pretty special place for me lyrically and emotionally. And that kind of was a bit daunting, but I hope I do it justice.
I'm sure you will. And so on that note, please stick around because we do have Mike Celia performing his version of Head High by Chloe Charles right here on Indie Fish TV.
Head high, heart low, fake it till you feel it. I'ma push on till I break down. Oh, my wheels may be turning, this engine is fuming. It's about to burn. See, I tried to be normal, live like the rest, and my demon takes over and straddles my chest. I tried to be normal, love like the rest, and my demon takes over, straddles my chest. I can't breathe. Head high, heart low, fake it till you feel it. I'ma stand tall till the inside matches out. Wait a minute, stop. I'm too busy trying not to drown. See, I tried to be normal, live like the rest, and my demon takes over and straddles my chest. I tried to be normal, love like the rest, my demon takes over, straddles my chest. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Once more, that was Canadian artist Mike Celia covering the music of Chloe Charles. For more on Mike or Chloe or any of our Indie Fish artists, please subscribe to our Indie Fish TV YouTube channel, or you can follow us at We Are WOLFVILLE on our Facebook or our Instagram.
So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Make sure to join us every Thursday right here on our Indie Fish TV YouTube channel for the best in Canadian independent artists, covering the best in Canadian independent artists.
Mwah!
Peace.
Sorry. No, I'm actually don't want to be here for any of this, but
Freaking tasty chocolate bar waiting here, and you guys are keeping me from it. So.
Oh,
okay.